Yo, what's going on YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and today we are taking a look at the conclusion of another first round series matchup, this time on the West Coast, as we're taking a look at the Edmonton Oilers defeating the Los Angeles Kings in 5 games for their first round matchup. This is a similar story now, as the Los Angeles Kings, for the now second consecutive season, have lost to the Edmonton Oilers in the first round. So we're going to take a look at, kind of what the future looks like for the Kings going into this summer. I'll be doing an entire video of that, but we'll be going over it quickly. We'll also be going over what is next for the Edmonton Oilers in their potential second round matchup. And of course, we'll be recapping this series and ultimately what led to the Edmonton Oilers winning this series in 5. If you like this content, want to see more videos just like this one, especially now that we're in the playoffs, getting ready for the draft, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. So the Edmonton Oilers pretty much dismantled the Los Angeles Kings and got almost as close to a sweep as you can get. And, unfortunately for the Los Angeles Kings, the grim reality is they just were outskilled, outplayed, outskated. The Edmonton Oilers were just a better team. This is a more complete Edmonton Oilers team than the Kings saw last year. And as the Kings have gotten better, they can't keep up with these guys yet. And unfortunately, we're also seeing sort of a shift with the Kings, which I'll talk about again in my Kings future offseason look. But this team is shifting their focus. So it's going to start to become less about Drew Doughty, Anze Kopitar, and it's going to become more of the Quentin Byfield, Mikey Anderson show in LA moving forward. And of course, we saw a couple of guys like their leading point producer here during this series, guys like Adrian Kempe, Kevin Fiala. Those guys are going to be around. They're going to be part of the core moving forward as well. But really, the key thing for the Los Angeles Kings this summer, I would think, is figuring out that goalie situation, because that was a problem in this series. And the Edmonton Oilers really, I don't typically read too much into that first 2 games, because usually teams can come back from that. The problem is the way the Oilers started this series really set the tempo for this series. And I said this in the preview, if the Kings were going to win this series, they were going to have to win a lot of games 3-1, 3-2, 2-1, 1-0, those types of games. But A, didn't really have the scoring for the entirety of the series to do that. And B, they didn't have the goaltending to keep the puck out of the net in order to do that. And that was a big problem for them in this series, and it was pretty evident, especially in Game 1, where they lost Game 1 7-4. Now, this is going back now. This is Game 5, but look at the series. Look how many goals were scored in this series. If I told you, without putting the name, the team next to the name, right? So let's just say that, just because, we are just going to look at the scores, just to prove my point here, okay? You look at those scores. You tell me before the series starts who's going to win that series, right? The only game legitimately in this series that would have been in the favor of the Kings was technically Game 4. And it was a 1-0 game. Every other game, look how many goals the Edmonton Oilers had scored. 7 in Game 1. 5 in Game 2. Yes, it was overtime. But still, they scored 5 goals. So that's 12 goals in 2 games. And then you're hoping maybe the momentum will shift in Game 3. Nope. Crypto.com saw 6 goals in Game 3. 1 goal. That was the only game where they scored less than 4 goals in a game. And then, of course, in Game 5, they scored 4. So that tells you a pretty big part of the story. And what really, I think, was the killer for the Kings was in Game 4, it looked like that was their game to win. That was their style of game, a 1-0 game. And they were on the losing end of it. So not only were they getting dominated and not playing their game in the other 4 games of the series, but in Game 4, in what felt like was a game that got away from them. That was their type of game. That was the game style they were going to win with. The Oilers still beat them at their own game. And that is demoralizing. And unfortunately, there wasn't much left for the Kings after that. And and we're going to talk about it in my other video, but this is a big offseason for the Kings in the sense that we are going to start to see the continual transition of the older players like Kopitar and Doughty down to the younger core. And this team needs to get that goaltending figured out. And that was, like I said, pretty evident in this series. They might even look to add another defenseman. I think that's something that the Kings will need to do here. And if they want to get anywhere, they're going to need to do those additions because there are too many good teams in the Western Conference that are big and can skate well. And that was a problem the Oilers have dealt with for the past couple of years. But now, Evan Bouchard's a good puck-moving defenseman. Now you're seeing Mattias Ekholm come in there last year. One of the best trades that the Edmonton Oilers have made. That was incredible there by the management there in Edmonton. And we're starting to see the rewards of that because now, like I said, they're bigger and they can skate. And unfortunately for the Kings, they're not really there. And like I said, it's very nice to see guys like Kempe, Byfield, Fiala getting on the board. Mikey Anderson played well defensively, but again, it's tough because it's the Oilers, so it's hard to evaluate because he did get burned a couple times, but this series is definitely not going to fall on a guy like Mikey Anderson. There was way too many other factors in this series that the Kings just weren't good enough, and they just were playing a team that just outmatched them in pretty much every way. And that's kind of how this series fell apart for the Kings. And for the Oilers, kind of to talk about the Oilers here for a minute, they did everything they needed to do. I mean, yeah, they lost game 2 of this series, but you never really felt like the Kings were that much of a threat. And, there wasn't much of a pushback from the Kings after game 2. Games 3, 4, and 5, obviously, they lose those games, and that's kind of it, and that's a wrap. But, like I said, the reality is for the Los Angeles Kings is they're a good team, but they aren't there yet. And the Oilers have dealt with that themselves. The Oilers are a team that has had problems getting past the first round, going on deep playoff runs. They've only been, I think, to the Western Conference Final once in the McDavid era, and that's not good enough. The expectations are and should be higher than just getting to the Western Conference Finals once with a generational talent like Connor McDavid. And maybe this is the year because a lot of Oilers fans are excited about the prospect of, you don't want to look too far ahead, but they played the Kings in this series. They're going to play either Nashville or Vancouver, and if you look at the playoffs overall, that looks like maybe one of the weaker matchups in the first round overall. So when you put all things together here, this is a situation where the Edmonton Oilers could find themselves, not to say skating their way easily to the Western Conference Final, but it's an easier path than most other teams in the National Hockey League getting to that spot. And, the tough matchup for them will definitely be in the Central Division. Whoever comes out of the Central, whether it's Vegas, Dallas, or Colorado, whoever comes out of that bracket, that's going to be difficult. But for the Edmonton Oilers, if they could get 2 quote-unquote easier rounds, it's hard to say that, especially with a rival like Vancouver. It's, once rivalry gets put into the picture, things totally change. So you can't really bank that one in there. But, that's something that Oilers fans are looking at and, the excited of the potential that could be looming with that situation. Like I said, they're going to play the winner of Vancouver or Nashville. At this point, it looks like it'll be Vancouver, which would be a really cool matchup. It would be nice to see that. There's obviously the storyline of, Mattias Ekholm playing his former team if they do play the Predators, which would be kind of cool. But I think that the Vancouver Canucks at this point will win this series. I think Game 4 was a big win for them to go up 3-1 in that series, and now it's kind of Nashville just fighting back. But I think ultimately, whether it's Game 6 or 7, the Edmonton Oilers will end up playing the Canucks. With that said, that is pretty much it for today's video. Hopefully you guys liked this video. Hopefully you guys like this series. I gotta be honest, I didn't watch as much of this series as I would have liked because it was just so late. So it was a lot more like watching the highlights, listening to the other podcasts for the Oilers and the Kings. So I wish I could have saw more of this series, but it doesn't really seem like I missed that much. 1 overtime game with Kopitar, and that was pretty much it. The Oilers kind of wrote the ship most of the way here. Now I'm hoping that maybe one of the earlier slots will be coming for the Oilers in the second round, depending on who they match up with, right? Because if it is Vancouver, there's going to be a lot more 10 p.m. Eastern times. So that I might have to go more out of my way for a rivalry matchup like that. But that could be an incredible series. If it really is Vancouver-Edmonton, oh baby, that Western Canadian hockey is going to get put to the test. We have not seen a playoff series like that since the Battle of Alberta, right? Between Calgary and Edmonton a couple years back. This is going to be to that similar level in my opinion, and I'm totally here for it. So guys, if you like this video, thank you for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Peace out, guys.